Hello and welcome. I'm Dan McDermott. This is Google Plus Week, our unofficial look at the world's newest social network. A special welcome to our new viewers and listeners from Huffington Post, and also to the regular folks from Justin.tv, Blog Talk Radio, and of course, Google Plus. Joining me as always from Houston, Texas is my guest or co-host, whatever you want to call her. She's relaxing in the sun right now. Her name is Christina Trapolino. Christina, welcome.
Hi, Dan.
All right, and also we have Barbara Jean, who I don't have. She hasn't. I don't know if I should say this because we have Google folks who watch this show, but she that's her real name. So there, I said it. Okay, all right. We have what we did. That's one of our topics tonight. I had the crazy notion to create a Google Doc and just open it up to anybody. So the ultimate experiment in democracy, which we still do here in the United States, post 9/11. And what I did was I allowed anybody to edit the document, and we had a number of really interesting topics. We're not going to be able to hit all of them, but the document will live on with this episode, so folks can check out everything up to it. At some point, we'll probably close it to editing. I think we had one hacking incident. Christina, although, did it originally say 8 o'clock at the top? I had start time 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, midnight GMT for my friends in the UK. And then someone changed it to 9 and 6, but they left the midnight. So I guess maybe it was a midnight person.
That happened. I don't know if that's technically hacking. I do think someone may have been engaging in shenanigans, but hacking might be a strong word for that.
Well, okay. I guess it's all relative. All right. So anyway, the link is on my Google Plus page, which is at gplus.to/McDermott. And also Christina's Plus page is gplus.to/Trapolino. That's where she gets her good looks, her Italian heritage. All right. But we have her on here for her intellect and her observations about Google Plus, which have earned her now over 10,000 folks who have circled Christina. We're not sure what the circle names are, but anyway, all right. So the big news this week, is the news being new, is that games are arriving, and as of now, I don't think I have them. I think this is not a gender neutral selection process, Christina. It seems to me it's not based on circles, because I have more folks who have circled me than Emily, and you have way more than I do, but it seems that both of you, I think, have gotten your games. I think I have offended someone at Google with my Sausage Factory cracks on previous shows, and so they've deliberately excluded me from the games. Or perhaps I should defend my honor and about some of the cracks that I made about the quote-unquote Facebook people bringing their games. But I just want to clarify, I like games. I have all of my newspapers. We have games in them, and I like Sudoku. I have that on my phone, and I'm pro games. The only, I don't think anybody's anti-game at all. I think the whole thing was best illustrated with something in an NPR post about someone just bought a cow in Farmville. Click here to get a free cow, and like, it's in with the mainstream. So what Google's going to do, and I'm going to turn it over to Christina, but what Google's going to do is kind of separate that out, and then and they're going to bring games in, which I think is a good idea to get revenue for Google. You can make, I could tell you, we're in the advertising business. I mean, I own newspapers, but basically it's an advertising vehicle, and it's a vehicle to exercise our First Amendment freedoms. We talk about politics, news, all kinds of stuff, but they're going to make a whole lot more money from in-game purchases than they will from ads next to your thing, which we really don't want too many of anyway. So why don't you give me the brief rundown, Christina, and tell us what the deal is with the games and what your thoughts are.
Well, what I think most people have been worried about is that it would be like Facebook, and we would have sort of a mishmash of all the content that we've gotten really attached to and the stuff that we really like to read. We were worried it would suddenly be peppered with exactly that, buy a free cow for me in Farmville. So it seems that as soon as I got the Games tab, I wanted to make sure that wasn't the case. I was a little nervous about even playing one of these games because I thought, oh no, I'm going to click this and they're going to spam all my friends. But it's really separate. It's its own little microcosm of games. There's only a few there at the moment. And by the way, one of them is Sudoku, or Sudoku. I don't ever know how to pronounce it. But that's in there. And there's Angry Birds and
it's Sudoku. I was born in Japan. I know. It's Sudoku. I know how to do karaoke and play Sudoku because I was born in Japan. That's also where I got my height, but I'm sorry to interrupt. And also, if you could speak up a little bit, because I'm looking in our chat room, and I don't know how to pronounce it. Sky Geeks. Sky Geek says he or she cannot.
Yeah.
Oh, is it? Christopher cannot hear you well.
It's a landline. The phone is a bit old, so I'm trying to speak more into the microphone. I hope that's better.
All right.
Anyway, so
I apologize. Continue on.
No, Sudoku is one of the games, and anyway, it's all very separate. It's its own little world. I don't have anything in my stream. I do have notifications coming in along with all of my other notifications, though, and I'm not sure yet if there's a way to turn that off. I would like it to be even more separated than it already is. But I think for just having rolled out, this is a good. I mean, I think it's a good direction to take it. I mean, we knew they were going to do this, so it seems like it's pretty neat. I don't know if there are going to be pay games. I don't know any of that, but right now it seems like it's a pretty cool little mini world within Google Plus. So that's what I was hoping for if they were going to do it.
I think even Facebook announced yesterday that they were going to separate games from the mainstream. Thank God, because that was the main complaint. But really, I think this is great because obviously, Zuckerberg and his crew are just furiously watching what's going on with Google Plus, and Google Plus has learned from any complaints folks have had, either voiced to them or their own teams using Facebook. So they're competition's good. Facebook was basically unchallenged since they dethroned MySpace, and now they're going to go neck and neck, adding features. I mean, they added video right at the same time, and or I guess as Google Plus announced, right at the same time, Facebook announced their video partnership with Skype, and now they're both working on improving the games. Let me bring in Barbara Jean. Barbara Jean, what do you have games yet?
I see the icon there, but I'm not a game player. I have way too many other distractions on the internet to get caught up in that.
Man, see, I'm ranting about this today because I don't have it yet. But all the women have it. I see you have it. You're not even using it. You should be able to invite people. This sucks.
Let me see. I'll see if I can.
I'm joking. You can't. If I go to games, it says we know you're excited about games, but you can't play them yet. Why don't you try a Hangout? Okay, well. So it's right at the top next to your 4 icons, like for your profile, your circles, your home page, right next to your.
Yes.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
But it just arrived there. It just arrived.
Maybe if I refresh, maybe during the show. Okay, so you have it and you're not using it, taunting me with adding insult to injury. Okay, so I'm looking here at our things here. I guess some of the folks on our Google Doc, we've got some folks. We had the official notice and then a video and then the official notice from Facebook about what they're doing. And gaming is a big deal. It's $1 billion industry, estimated to hit this year. Folks buying a cow or what have you. And the question is, I guess one point made in our thing here, the fears it's a bad thing, and folks are worried about it. I think it's a mountain being made out of a molehill. The games are coming; they're going to be there, available to folks who want to play them. I'll check them out. I know Emily was making fun of me because she got it as well. Our McDermott Report regular. We'll see. Let's play some games. It's yet another way to waste time with Google Plus, and it's going to bring in my whole thing from the beginning. Has been all the geeks are on, all the technical people, the scientists, everyone's on there, the journalists. But the whole thing was our grandma and grandpa who talk to the grandkids on Facebook, are they going to come over? Are the the soccer moms, right? Are they going to come over? And largely they've been circling the tarmac. And I I was getting a haircut and I asked the girl, oh, I've heard about it, Google Plus, whatever. But largely it was initially a male-dominated site. And I guess looking at the research for today's show, most of the folks who like those games are female. And so I think it's terrific that they're going to add this demographic without, I don't want to say pollute, without occupying the mainstream for everyone with lots of game updates. So I think that's a good thing. Now, one of the reasons, either y'all want to add anything on the game debate before we get to names?
Yeah, I do, because I think that when you say that you think people are making a mountain out of a over the privacy issue, I think Google has really, they've emphasized privacy so much throughout this entire launch, and I mean, I guess it's not so much a launch as a beta, I don't know what it's called, but it's all been about privacy and about controlling your own data, and that's sort of been the
Right.
rhetoric that we've been getting, and for the most part, I believe it. I think they're doing some things, we'll talk about in a minute with privacy regarding names, but when it comes to games, people are concerned that, they saw what happened on Facebook. It felt like third-party apps were allowed to sort of run rampant and, take people's data without, it was just all opt-in. Nobody knew how much of their data was being shared and with whom. And Google is taking great care, I think, not to repeat that and to have that sense of outrage. So people are, oh, congratulations, did you just get games? I saw in the chat. Are you excited?
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm going to make fun of everyone who doesn't have them yet.
But now when you get out of the show, try playing a game, and you'll notice that every game that you try to play will ask you for access to your data, and people react, a certain way to that question. I think a lot of developers they didn't like this approach because it sort of alarmed people anyway. And now we have this society online where we value our privacy and we want to know exactly what you're going to do with the information and what information you want. But some people aren't used to that yet, and they get a little alarmed by it. So I think it's not a mountain being made out of a molehill, but people have a reason to be, a little wary. Facebook really kind of broke our trust, I think. So.
Well, I'm not making light of privacy concerns, although I share MySpace founder Tom Anderson's observation that it's really not that much of a concern for most people, but most people have a concern about it. But I'm a public figure, so I don't care. Everything I put online, I would expect anybody to read. I don't put it online if I don't want to read it, somewhere else. But I'm looking here. I think, yeah, it's cool. And now I'll be able to play with them whenever Christina's talking. If you see me, I've never played Angry Birds because I'm afraid I'll get addicted to it. And but I will. I think there's a Sudoku, and Emily discovered some kind of role-playing game or some kind of shoot 'em up. I forget, Empire Wars or something. So she's all excited about that. And but yeah, I think it's cool. It's an innovation. We'll know more next week because they rolled this out today. And I'm glad that I got turned on because I clicked refresh just a few moments ago, and then I clicked it again, and there it is. So there we have it. So are we good to go to naming issues? That's the hot issue right now.
Yeah,
Sure.
I definitely want to hear from Barb about her experience.
Before I do that, I'll just say to folks, if you'd like to join us on the phone, you're welcome to do so. You can either just listen or you can press 1 to call us. The number's on the screen, 818-688-6625. Again, you can just listen to the show, or you can press 1 to join in. If you join in, please mute the video volume because there's a delay on the video version. And then also, I'm in the chat room, as is Christina, and I'm looking when I can. What am I going to play first? I think there's a Sudoku game. I'll do that just to see, how good the games are. And then I don't know. I'll experiment. But I need another time waster. I have no time at all. So let's get Barbara Jean in here. As I do that, I'm looking here at the name wars. I guess they announced a change in the policy that you'd have that they would give you 4 days before they would do anything. If they think you're violating, if they think that Henrietta Peacock is not really your name, and they flag you, that they'll give you 4 days to fix it or respond before they do any action against you. So that is an obvious reaction to users being outraged. And then so let's go. Why don't you tell us your story, Barbara Jean? You were previously on the show. I don't know if I can say what your previous name was.
Sure you can. Sure you can.
Was it?
I've added it as my alias, or what, at the bottom of your screen now. You can say your nickname, so I put it on there. It's Mrs. Ford.
Okay. Mrs. Force. Okay. So I'm going to put your picture up. So let me go ahead and tell us your story. Barbara Jean, tell us your story about what happened.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, it's really weird to hear you guys calling me Barbara Jean, because while people know my name in real life, I've been Mrs. Forrest for 4 years on the internet. So to see people call me Barb is really weird on the computer. But that's how most people know me. So I really didn't want to switch to my legal name because no one would know how to find me. But I also, the people that I want to see on the internet, and then the people I didn't want to see me on the internet, including my students, I didn't want them to find me. And I just worry about, Christina, I'm impressed that you're brave enough to have your name, and who knows, maybe that's not your name, but your name out there. I just feel too vulnerable, and I think it's hard. It's a little risky for people, and I think I wrote a snarky comment to Google about, am I going to be able to sue you now when some nut job comes and knocks on my door? Because he looked me up on the internet and found where I live, which anyone can find your address just from your real name. I just don't understand why they'd want people to be vulnerable like that. You showed tonight on our Google Doc, we saw an example of someone just being an idiot, and or you could just say shenanigans, which was a good word, but all kinds of different people out there, and I want to be able to control, like Christina was saying, that's what Google's all about, is being able to control your experience. I want to be able to control that.
Now, your initial. Okay, go ahead. I was going to say your initial experience. You were Mrs. Fours, and did you get flagged, or you just voluntarily switched it? You were booted, right?
Well, last night I contacted the gentleman in the video, and I said, I just pleaded my case, and he hasn't responded. But then he circled me last night, so I was like, uh-oh, the sharks are around me. And then this morning when I logged on, my profile, it said my profile was being under review and that I was violating the principles, and they would, that I needed to change it. So I finally, changed it, and then I waited. And by the end of the day, it was apparently approved because I no longer have that message on my profile. And I can get back in there. And on the bottom of my profile now, it has my Mrs. Fours spelled the 2 ways that it's known online. And I feel satisfied that people that are looking for Mrs. Fours are going to find me under this name that other people in real life know me as. But I'm still concerned about people that are not going to be approved or are going to get booted, because there are very good reasons for people not to be themselves, like their real names on the internet.
Okay, so for now, are you? If someone wants to communicate with you, can they do that, or?
Yeah.
Or is that the point you're making, that you don't want someone? How can they find you? Do you have a G+.2 URL?
I can find it here, but they can still find me the way they did before, just Barbara Jean on now, or they can find me under Mrs. Fours on Google. G+, I'm sorry. I don't see the URL, so I'm not really positive how to find it here. But
do you think that
I was able to talk to people today and still use the profile? They said it was locked. Someone who went to look at my profile couldn't see anything, but I could. But they could talk to me today.
Okay, let me ask you, because being the devil's advocate here, I think if they want to say, okay, there are places where you can create a fake name, Twitter, MySpace,
Sure.
Facebook. You can do it, and you could even do it if surreptitiously on Google Plus, right? You could create a Gmail, Joe
Right.
Smith or whatever, and post a picture of whatever, because you don't have to use a picture of yourself.
Right.
Um,
No.
what they're saying is that they're saying this is a service. It's a free service that we think, just like with your real friends, you would give your real name. And I've made this point before. It would be very odd if you met someone in a restaurant and they gave you a fake name. That's odd. And that they wanted to go a step beyond previous social networks and really be rigid about that and say this is a place where you have to be yourself. If you can't be yourself, you can play elsewhere. So don't they have a point? I mean, can't they, he who
Yeah, well, they
owns
do.
the playground can make the rules, or you can go play somewhere else. I mean, that's their point, right?
Absolutely. I absolutely respect their right to do that. It's their, place to do that. But if I knew it was going to be that way for me here, I would have just stayed on Facebook, because Facebook is where my friends and family are. And on Google Plus, I have some friends and no family here yet, but friends. But a lot, like most of the people I'm circled or just met in the last month. I don't go into a bar and talk to someone or meet someone at a restaurant, no matter how friendly they are. I might not tell them my last name. I'm not comfortable with that. I guess maybe it's different, too, for women or people that are in vulnerable groups. Like I said, I would have just stayed in Facebook, and I use my regular name there because I only friend people that I know. In Google Plus, I've really been inspired. I've just been so inspired by the educational leaders and the politics. Actually, I think it's a lot more intellectual in Google Plus right now than Facebook is, and I'm loving that. And I wouldn't be able to stay if I had to. It's. I think people should have control of what they call themselves in here. I guess that's what I'm saying.
I hear you. I think when I thought of MySpace, and we got another call I'm going to bring in just a sec. When I thought of MySpace, it was like people were, man, I got so wasted last night. Here are pictures. And Facebook was sort of, we're having a event, join it, or some of the same stuff. But Google Plus it seems to me, a step above intellectually. But I like all of them. I mean, they're all. Although I find myself, I went on Facebook today because we have a bunch of stuff. I'm in Lynchburg. We had a murder in this area that we're covering, and then we had a bank robbery. A guy walked into a Walmart bank, and I mean, I don't know how many, probably 100 different cameras on the guy, and he robs the bank, and he got away with it so far. And so we're covering that. But I went on Facebook to post that story, right? And we're thinking, like, maybe if he went into the police station, he would have been and robbed a bank there. It would have been more cameras, But anyway, so all this is going on. So I went to Facebook to post this, and then people made comments and stuff. But on Plus, it's sort of, I don't know, it's a different level. I agree. A lot of that's because the early adopters met that stereotype, and so now it's becoming more mainstream. Thus, I now have games on my Plus. All right, let me bring in another caller here. This is from area code 480. How you doing? Hi, caller from 480 area code. I hear something. I hear Angry Birds. 480-299, are you there?
Yeah,
Did you want to join us, or are you just listening?
I was just listening.
Oh, okay. All right, no problem. If you want to join us again, just or if you want to join us for the conversation, just mention me in a post, and I'll get it. Also, we're checking the chat room occasionally here. I'm trying as much as I can. Some of these are funny. Like one person said, "Is Lady Gaga her real name?" Because she has, she's on Google Plus. That's I guess, but really the rule isn't your real name; it's the name you normally go by. And so I guess it would fit that, right, Christina?
Yeah, I mean, that's been my question really since celebrities were being ushered in and the name policy was sort of becoming an issue at the same time. And it was like, okay, Google, I'm really trying here to see your side of this, but if you're going to say that someone has to use, and I don't know that anyone from Google has said you have to use your legal name, but they seem to be, if I go by, I have some friends that we joke about my, rapper name being C-Trap, and it's a huge joke. But, if I wanted to list that as my name on Google Plus, there are enough people in my life who know me by, a silly name like that. It's hard for me to swallow blatant, this person is a celebrity, therefore her name or his name that's obviously not a human name, or, sometimes it's a human name, but something that's obviously, the rules don't apply evenly. It's not fair. You can't let Lady Gaga be Lady Gaga and Mrs. Fours not be Mrs. Fours when, while their circles in real life maybe of a different size, it's the same thing. Lady Gaga with her intimate circle of friends may not go by Lady Gaga. It's really none of our business. Mrs. Fours may go by, and we know she does go by her real name in her real life, and it's really none of our business. Her role on Google Plus, like Lady Gaga's role on Google Plus, is legitimate, and I think people, they both have audiences, so I'm starting to, I don't get outraged necessarily, but I'm starting to, feel like Google may need to really reassess this, and they're not winning any points with me.
I think that she has a point. Go ahead. Go ahead, Barbara.
I think it's kind of I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong and how dare they and whatever. I'm just saying it's not a good business decision to me to say to people that they should make themselves vulnerable by using their real names or make that call for them. I just don't think it's a good idea, and I think they need to be listening.
Yeah, I think you have a point. See, I imagine that, they sat around with initial meetings and said, okay, we hate Mark Zuckerberg's guts. He keeps screwing with us, and we want to go after his jugular vein, and let's create a social network. Let's hit him where it hurts. Now, then they looked at the things that MySpace had done right and wrong, and Friendster, and the things that are popular with Orkut, and Facebook. And then they said, okay, what can we do that's better? What can we do that's different? And this is about social networking, which means, relationships with people in a social setting, albeit a virtual one. And they said, well, what can we do to create it more like real life? And I think this is one of those things. Now, Barbara Jean brings up a unique situation. I guess it's not entirely unique, but something that is interesting in that, she teaches kids, and she doesn't want necessarily, they know her as Mrs. Fours. Maybe you could have, someone who worked in I'm a former school teacher. I know folks who used to work. I know one guy used to be the deputy warden at Lorton Reformatory. And, he was Captain so-and-so or Lieutenant so-and-so. And he may not have wanted his residents or guests at Lorton Reformatory to necessarily know, what he was up to if they got out, or their families. There are situations. And I think that I could see there should be some way to have a compromise. And I think that if Lady Gaga can be Lady Gaga on Google Plus, I don't see why Mrs. Fours, who is Mrs. Fours for 8 hours a day, can't be Mrs. Fours on Google Plus.
Oh, I just want to clarify. My students do not know me as Mrs. Fours at all. Bloggers do. And people on the internet know me as that name.
Ah, so you have 4 identities. I'm just kidding. I'm picking on you. All right. So that's okay, Barbara Jean. If that's your real name. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, but you make a good point, and you find that exception that we should be thinking about. So I guess looking at the docs, and this went crazy, man. I put this thing out there, and there were like 15 people at one point busily editing this thing, adding all this stuff, and then I'm looking at this the Korea thing, which I'm gonna there's a link in here. Korea. This is from Silicon Valley Watcher, and Google tests the limits of government bars Korean users from uploading videos and leaving comments. There's Google's found a loophole in South Korea's law that forces websites with at least 100,000 users to verify the real names of users if they upload files or leave comments. Google had crippled its Korean version of YouTube, preventing any uploads or comments and thus not requiring real name verification. And this is interesting because I guess what they did, Google's Korea blog said that Korean users could upload videos to YouTube by choosing a version of a different country. Every country has different rules, right? And I know in the United States, the thing that covered this sort of thing was the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, which was the way that Google got out of the billion-dollar lawsuit from Viacom. Viacom sued them of just allowing a wholesale Napster-like, LimeWire-like ability for people to upload copyrighted content and flout the law. And Google, but the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is modern in that it says if you have a site, if someone posts something, you can't monitor everything all the time and pre-approve it and give the site services away for free. The math doesn't work. So what they said was that as long as they respond in a reasonable amount of time, anyone can request. And the judge found that when Viacom would send in a copyright violation notice, Google would within hours or minutes remove the video. They were very fast, and so that was how they won that lawsuit. And Korea has a different approach where they're preventing people from doing anything with anonymity. It's a different, we can't. Just like, we're finding it difficult to export our Western-style democracy to areas of Afghanistan, now we're with 90% illiteracy. Every country's different and has different needs, wants, desires, different cultures. In Korea, right next to North Korea, they're always in constant fear and I guess for whatever reason they've got this. Also, their internet's a lot faster than that in the United States, I think. It's a lot easier in a smaller country to have awesome internet, just like you could do it in a city here. But so I think that's a whole thing, and it's part of the challenge of being the international country or company that Google is, that they have to deal with these things all over the globe in different ways. I guess they're having a workaround in Korea, but they not necessarily went their way in China with Google. And then what do you think about the British Prime Minister saying, I guess this really isn't in the right topic place. What do you think about the British Prime Minister saying, because of the riots in London, that they should consider shutting down social networks to prevent folks? What do you think, Christina?
I just think that's a bad idea. You cannot turn off an entire channel because of a certain amount of noise on it. It gets into a lot of really complex issues about, I just think it's a mistake. I think who is it? What's his name? David Cameron, I think. Or am I remembering that right?
Yes, Prime Minister David Cameron, a Conservative member of Parliament and Prime Minister. But I know you knew that.
Yeah, well, I never remember his name. I can see his face in my head, but I just think it's a mistake. I think he said something really contradictory. I remember reading a blurb, something about, information, access to information being used for good and also being used for evil. And, it's just, it sounds to me like an excuse to be able to push a button and turn off, the airwaves. And I that makes me very uncomfortable. I don't like it. And, it's funny because it seems like something that Google, in particular, would not support itself. So, who knows if he really tries to shut down these networks, I think he may have a bigger situation on his hands than he anticipates.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, though, because they... I flippantly said, we haven't overthrown Egypt yet with Google Plus or anything like that, but it can work both ways. And I guess I'm almost disappointed that Google Plus isn't named as one of the tools that these rioters are using, because it would have shown an arrival. Now, I'm joking here, but they're using Twitter and Facebook to organize, and I guess we're not relevant enough here on Google Plus to warrant being used by these hooligans. But yeah, that's interesting.
Well,
I guess
still need an invitation. I mean, you have to have an invitation to sign up. I think when Google Plus is open for anybody to sign up by just going to the website. I think that would be, a very different situation. And again, and I've said this before, these platforms are not created with the intention of giving, dissenters a special voice. That's a great way to use a platform, a social networking platform, and it's great that that's possible. But it would be very difficult. And I was talking to Ryan Crow, which some of you may be familiar with Ryan Crow. He's the Plus Tips guy. And he made a really interesting point that there's not a social network that sort of caters to that kind of, crisis response, maybe not revolutions, but, like the Virginia Tech issue, for example, or if we see natural disasters, it would be pretty interesting to see a social network that catered to that. I don't know that Google Plus has set itself up to be very useful that way, but I mean, it's certainly an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, I missed part of that. I was posting on Facebook. I was reading the chat room. You're saying, and all these IMs, and I had to cut my phone on silent because I was getting bombarded there. You're saying it'd be nice if we had a social network set up for
crisis response. I think it'd be interesting. I think we've seen, I've done a couple of little experiments with sharing, stuff that looks like it's breaking news, and we had the Virginia Tech almost incident last week that we discussed, and it seems like right now that's just this kind of quick response stuff is not, Google Plus isn't there yet. We don't have, Twitter is, it's a special case because Twitter is tied to SMS, and if you have a phone, you can have Twitter, you can use Twitter. Facebook, it doesn't really have that same appeal, but it makes sense, that people would tweet things from their cell phones, from different parts of a city. If, in London there was a lot of Twitter use, and, obviously, and it just seems like there isn't a lot of use in Google Plus, at least yet. I don't know how people would use it. I really don't, unless it was to foster a very quick discussion about something. I just don't. It seems like
it's not practical. It's not practical yet because, like, okay, we're going to get together later. We're going to throw rocks and bottles at Parliament or whatever. And so what I need you to do, I'm going to tell you when we're going to throw the rocks and bottles. But I need your Gmail address. Has to be Gmail. Then I'm going to mention you in a post. And then when you get the email, you click here. I mean, it's just not practical. Much easier just, to plan a rioting with Twitter or Facebook because that's where the folks are. That's my take. I'm being very facetious. And we've lost Mrs. Fours. But yeah, so I guess, if it depends on the circumstance, but that's a lot of power. It worked. Mubarak did it in Egypt. He just shut the internet straight down, and it didn't work for him. But, every country's not different. Every country's different, and every revolution's different. Some, Mahatma Gandhi practiced nonviolence, and a lot of those teachings and teachings from others who have followed in his footsteps were used by the folks in Egypt. They said, absolutely, when those troops are there, you just give them a kiss. Don't throw anything. Don't yell at them. Be very nice to them. Just say, we're not moving, and we respect you, and we love you like a brother. And that worked in Egypt. It's not doing, but I don't know if that would work in Syria. Where they're just mowing down villages. I mean, every country's different, and every revolution's different. Every reaction's different from these folks. But England is not the United States in terms of any kind of broad First Amendment. But then remember that our country was founded by British colonists who came here, and when they wrote the U.S. Constitution, the very first 10 amendments were mainly designed to correct perceived wrongs under British rule. And the very first amendment, written by James Madison, who hailed from about an hour from where I am right now, the very first amendment was that the freedom of speech, will not be infringed. And that was the number one thing that they wanted to say. And so England still has remnants, I guess, of a less open speech society. They, celebrities can quash stories about them that they don't like, and you can't do that here. So, I mean, I guess there are pros and cons, but in general, I prefer more speech. Of course, I'm a newspaper guy, so obviously I'm pro First Amendment. And then let's see here. I'm looking at our Google. Do we have anything above?
Is getting pretty exciting. There's a lot of discussion going on in there, and I would really, I keep typing. I'm not sure if he's seeing it, but Record Sage is the username. I really wish he would call and say some of these things. He's being very vocal about, he's taking this sort of the opposite extreme, which is, Google, he says Google owes you nothing. It's their service. It's a free service. It's for them to decide. Don't like it, don't use it. And it looks like he's going to call, so hopefully we'll get to hear from him.
So we're talking about the naming policy?
Correct.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, about the names.
All right, I think this is
Correct. Yeah, about
area code 206. Is that you?
That's me.
Okay, cool. Hey, do me a favor. Turn the volume down on your computer, please,
Okay.
because we're getting the delay
Yep.
back. I can still hear
Absolutely.
Christina talking, probably bragging that she had games before I did.
Yeah, something like that.
So I guess I made a point earlier that it's their service. I see her point. I see Mrs. Ford's point, Barbara Jean, that she's in a unique situation where she doesn't want to be denied access to this neat social network, but she has concerns about using her real name. And what are you saying?
Well, I certainly understand it. As you can tell from my accent, I'm not from the U.S. Okay, I came from USSR, and I totally understand people's concerns about somebody knocking on their doors and hauling their relatives away in the middle of the night, never to be seen again. I mean, I totally understand that concept, and I appreciate their sentiments. All my point is that I think the reason Google is doing what they're doing, there's several reasons. Number one, I think Brin has a totally different perspective from most people because he's from the Soviet Union, and even though he was a little boy when they came, his parents and everything else, you don't grow up in a ex-Russian family without knowing any of this stuff. So he's full aware of exactly how these things work in those kind of countries. That's one thing, not to mention his wisdom from doing it afterwards. Second thing is that, when you're typing something out there on the internet, doesn't matter which service you're using, you're definitely going to have a totally different tone if it's you, as opposed to some mythical character that nobody knows that basically is out in outer space. I mean, we heard about all these chats that, these 40-year-old, hairy old guys, trying to talk to 7-year-old girls. I mean, stuff happens when you mimic something else or somebody else intentionally or accidentally. It doesn't matter. So it's something that happens. But when it's your real name, then for not everybody, but a lot of people will pause and think, if my name is Oleg Moskalensky, which, by the way, is what it is, and then I'm putting myself out there as Record Sage, which is the nickname I use all over the place because they require a nickname to sign on. So not because I'm afraid to use my real name or anything. Then if I use that, I can type anything I want. Yeah, by that nickname, people will know somebody, but they have no idea who I am. But if I'm using my real name, there is this automatic internal deal, a little pause that says, watch what you're doing, because, people will know if somebody that will actually see this, they might look at you in a totally different light. So there's immediate break about, using words that I typically wouldn't use or saying something I typically wouldn't use. There is automatically more civility, I would say. Because, and
Clearly,
I think that's one of the reasons Google is trying that is they're just saying, get rid of all the crap that you see in a bunch of other services, because we're thinking that using your real name, A, will give you an identity, so you don't have, 10, whatever, Lady Gaga's out there, doing whatever their thing is. And number two is, it's, you're what you are. You go to a store, you want to buy a TV, you got to give a real name. You're not going to go with Record Sage and buy a TV in the store. You're not going to go with Record Sage to a Social Security office or anything. Everywhere you have to use your real name. Banks everywhere. So all they're saying is, I don't think it's that much to ask to use your real name, just like you use everywhere. So I think for anybody who complains about it in the States, to me, totally unfounded. I think, personally, I don't buy it for a second, considering how people get treated in the States and how the laws work and everything else. The people outside of the country, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I hear what you're saying, but are you in Russia now? Or are you in the United States?
No. I mean, I've been in the States for over 30 years. We immigrated.
Well, then,
30 years
okay.
ago.
You're right. Google does, in fact, have the right to do whatever they want. But folks also have a right. But Google has
not to use them, of course.
Well, not to use them, and also to bitch about it if they're not happy. They have a right to exercise their First Amendment freedoms in this country, and they say, I don't like this.
Of course.
And also, Google has solicited feedback and has acted upon the feedback. So it's not like not only does Google have a right to do what they want to do, but no one else can. If you don't like it, shut up. I mean, that's not what we're saying either. But yeah, I think you have a point, and I made a similar point earlier, that it is their social network, and they're embarking on a new path to try to create a really good one, and they are so far asking. I feel that they are listening more to us and to me or Christina or whoever than Mark Zuckerberg's crew ever did. And they have reacted to it, and they've admitted, hey, we've learned. In this thing here today, yesterday, the one of the head engineer guys, they really need to get a TV studio because it's really awful quality. Some of these videos these guys put out, and they get 4 million views. But he said, they've listened to feedback and they're changing it instead of just deleting it, and then or deleting it or temporarily suspending it, and then you have you can appeal. Now they're issuing a concern, and then you have 4 days, and then they'll react if they're not happy. They're already listening to this. But I do think that there is a disconnect between the way they're treating celebrities and the way they're treating real people. When I joked about William Shatner, and I'm going to bring Christina in. I joked about William Shatner getting restored. I think he tweeted or something. It was immediate. But other people were directed to post in a forum, and maybe someone would read it. It's a disconnect. And how come Lady Gaga can be Lady Gaga, but Mrs. Forbes can't be Mrs. Forbes? I think there's a bit of a disconnect there. Go ahead, Christina.
Well, I just wanted to mention, I asked earlier, and I sort of interjected, but I just wonder if, there aren't exceptions, because I do agree, it is their business. They are free to run it as they please. I don't know that I would say that they owe us nothing. However, I do think there's a certain level, and not just because they've solicited feedback, but because a lot of people on Google Plus and people who talk about Google and social networks in general like to say that you have to remember that the user base is a product, that the advertisers are really, there is a sort of dynamic where the advertisers are really the consumers here. So if Google wants to make money, and if Google wants to have people, using their social network, then they have to sort of play the game that the users, to a degree, what the users, they have to listen to what they want. So
you're right. You're right. To a degree, they do need to do it, but at the same time, they can't sell their souls just for the fact that they can sell advertising.
No, but they could make exceptions. Is all I'm saying. I'm saying that they have to. What they need to be focusing on is a way to standardize an appeals process that includes exceptions. Like, okay, if you want me to use a different pseudonym than the one I've chosen, fine, but don't make me use my real name because X, Y, and Z. I have.
Okay, and let's please answer this question. If you, Christina, are using your name, and somebody, you do an exception for somebody else, why then can't you turn around and have them make an exception for you? That's totally unfair.
Because there would have to be an appeal. Again, it would have to be a standardized process that, it would have to be
but can you imagine millions of users appealing? Can you imagine the overhead this will create?
There is a logistics. Yeah, there's a logistics. That's what I was thinking. There is a big logistics issue. You're talking about a free service. It's not like we're paying $19.95 a month.
Exactly.
And how can they? But I see the Mrs. Forbes point.
Paying $19.95 a month. I mean, advertisers are paying for us.
The gamers.
What I was gonna, if I may say one more thing, what I was gonna say was that I think voicing the opinions. I'm not against voicing opinions. What I find incredible, and I think it's personally I don't find it positive, is that there's these people who arrogantly demand that Google does something. And because of what we just said about service being free, to me, it shouldn't be the case. You can politely ask, and then either they go with it or not. But this concept was, we're asking you, and if you're not doing it, we're coming out with pitchforks. To me, it's the wrong approach. That's all.
Well, but you're saying pitchforks. I think if I had, let's say that my name was really, Ichabod Johansson or something, and I go by Dan McDermott, and that's the name I normally go by, and they thought that I wasn't the real guy. Had I spent 2 weeks on my profile building it up and building up content, etc., and then got nuked, I might raise holy Cain, right? And people have a right to bitch about stuff. Now, they don't have a right to storm the castle, but I think if someone's legitimately upset, and people get attached to these things and spend hours and hours. This lady, when I was being slightly flippant about the whole game thing, mainly for humorous, dramatic effect and sincerity, but she wrote a very, very sincere, heartfelt defense. It's I love my games. They're very important to me. It's social with other people. I love it, and I really, and we read it, and we were knocked down a peg. She had a point, I still don't want it in my mainstream. I want it opt-in, right, instead of opt-out or no opt-out. But I think people have a right to bitch. I think they do. I think that's what makes our country great.
No, I agree, but also, going into the pitchforks concept, then on this other topic you touched about, the baloney that's going on in England. Yeah, I mean, it's one of these deals where you don't just, openly go and say, yeah, we're not shutting down the network regardless of anything. I mean, you got people dying and you got things burning down. You don't just say, throw the First Amendment at everybody's face and say, you know what, this thing stays up. Even though, especially when you find out that these people were organized to do these things using the network. I mean,
here's an interesting annagogy.
What I put online, though, I want to ask Christina a question, because it's one of the things people, a lot of times they avoid, especially when they talk about 9/11 and everything else, is what would be the case if the burning was going in the back, God forbid, of Christina's house? Would she feel the same way about saying, no, you don't shut out the network for any reason? But that's what I'd like to ask her and see what she says, if the burning was actually happening in her backyard.
Well, I think that with the burning... Excuse me, I'm a little congested. I think when the burning is going on in your backyard, I think there's a question of whether that's a more or less legitimate time to ask the question, because I think on a personal level, maybe I would want it shut down. But when I'm not it's a hard question, and you're right, it is something that people avoid, and I understand why. It's a tough question. I don't know. I think that shutting down the whole network is too high of a cost, because you have to think about every person that's using it to find safety, every person that's using it to
potentially look for people. No, you're right. I think I agree. I think it would be too much. I think cutting people off that generate that kind of message, that would make more sense. Yeah, you don't shut down the network. You just get rid of these people, at least temporarily, until things can be worked out. But if you see somebody...
That, I think, is a more reasonable approach. If the Prime Minister, instead of saying, let's shut down every social network, if the Prime Minister said, well, let's be innovative and find a way to pinpoint, and that brings up another issue. People don't want to be tracked that closely. But, if you want to have the free speech and you want to have the open network, both extremes can't have what they want. So, compromise is sort of the only.
Okay, let me say give some credit to. Go ahead, caller.
I was just going to say, if to give some credit to the Prime Minister, I mean, my guess is the guy doesn't know how to spell the word social network. So it's not because he's trying to do something drastic. It's just because a lot of these people, yesterday I talked to several people on Biznik, which is, the business network kind of started here in Seattle. It's all over the States now and other countries. And people were saying that, they're not doing Google Plus because, you can tell from their comments that they just have no idea what this is about at all, what social networking is all about. So the immediate reaction is, we haven't done it this way, we don't know what's what, we're not going to do it. And I think it's similar, my guess is it's similar with the guy, because you look at a bunch of these things who run countries, and you can tell that they barely can pick up the phone and find a map on it. I mean, it's just the way they are. They're from the previous generations. They don't know this stuff as well as they should because they concentrate on other things. So I think in his case, to give him some defense, he may not know what he's talking about. He says he would shut down the network because obviously that's an easy way to do something for somebody to just cut the cord. I think that's probably what he's saying. And I don't think it's because he thought about it and he really feels I mean, that's just my guess. I don't know for sure, but that's my guess.
Let me make two observations. One,
Yep.
I think it's great you called, and I hope you'll call again. And I hope you'll send me an email if you want me to link to your profile for folks who are looking at this, Christine and I, and for folks who want to carry on. I think you've raised some passion, but please do that. Please send me either share a message with me or just email me. You can email me on my profile, and let me know. Say I'm the Russian guy, you know. But I think it's funny because
I'm not insulting.
I'm sorry, you're the American. No.
No, just kidding.
I'm sorry.
In my
No,
profile,
there's
there was
nothing wrong.
one
I'm an Irish runt, you know. But but listen, I think what's ironic to me, I gotta state the irony in that you are so passionate about this, and you're doing such a good job talking about what you're talking about. But at the same time, you're saying others who disagree with Google, you know, shouldn't be as passionate or as vocal. And I would hope that everyone could be as skilled an orator and articulate a proponent of their beliefs as you are, because I think it's terrific. And the other thing I wanted to say is that this isn't unprecedented. We typically, the whole shutting down communication systems, let's not say social networks, let's say methods of communication, this is common. This happens a lot. Now, on internet things, lately, we remember Mubarak shutting down the internet in Egypt.
Sure.
And we associate this with bad people, you know, defending themselves against good people, or theoretically good people. But they do this, you know, when the police are storming a house, if there's a standoff or whatever, the first thing they do is they cut the phone line, they cut the electricity, so he can't communicate, he or she.
Yep.
And then there's this famous story when Justin Bieber, the Canadian pop singer, when he was doing a mall show, and apparently, you know, it was just beginning to explode, and of course, every teenage girl within 100 miles was at this mall, and it was all spread through Twitter, and the police said the concert was called off. It was in the middle of the shopping mall, and they said it was too many girls. They couldn't physically guarantee the safety of the spectators or the performers, and they were just nervous. And they said, "Okay, it's off." And they ordered the manager, Justin Bieber's manager, to tweet that the concert was canceled. And I don't know if he said "up yours" or just wouldn't do it or what have you. But they actually arrested the manager for refusing to tweet. And this was a whole thing, you know. This is definitely not topic one, but interesting. So this is, you know, it can go either way. And the problem is they can't just shut down Twitter or Facebook in a certain area. If they could, if there was a riot going on, buildings being torched, lives threatened, I don't think anybody would object if they could shut it down just for that neighborhood temporarily, right? I don't think anybody would object if they could shut it just in that neighborhood. The problem is I guess they don't have that tech ability, or the social networks that might have that ability, but really, you know, it depends. I mean, you could have a proxy server, you could have a IP masker. It's hard to tell based on IPs, and then they could just shut power to that area, but then that would affect, you know, ill people with oxygen machine. I mean, all sorts of things. So there's no real easy solution to this, but I see what he's saying. If people are demanding drastic action, just like after 9/11, the United States had no problem supporting the Patriot Act, which now people are protesting in airports against what they feel is intrusive. And I was having a conversation about this, and one of my cousins said, well, have you been to an airport lately? Because it ain't fun, you know, going through the whole cavity search that they do or whatever it is. So anyway, it's hard. And what are you doing when you're the guy that they're holding responsible, right? And someone's,
it's one of these, to be honest, Dan, with you, I can, you know, I know you're coming strictly from American perspective, and I'm coming from American, you know, not naturalized American perspective. And so to me, you know, the whole problem is if you look at how Israelis handled air flight, and of course they're under a lot more pressure terrorism-wise than somebody else would, like we would. You know, they don't have these things. They don't do body cavity searches, they don't do anything, and they don't have problems. Because
they profile.
They don't care
in Israel, they profile. I've been to 20 different countries.
Exactly.
I didn't move here until the 9th grade. I was an American citizen. My dad worked for the U.S. government. We were stationed in countries. I lived in Monrovia, Liberia, under a dictator who, after we left, he was literally skinned alive with a machete. You can YouTube it. I've been in India where people starve to death. I've seen all kinds of things. I've lived under military dictatorship, and I've lived in London, England, right on Abbey Road, next door to EMI Studios. Every day going to school, I walked the crosswalk on Abbey Road. But I was the last one to get Google Plus games, so that takes away any advantage.
Okay, but you got them now. You got them. The important thing is to get them. It's not the fact that you just, if you didn't get them, that would be a concern. But now you got them, so
I got them. I'm high on the hog. Now I'm going to make fun of all of my friends who don't have them yet. Say, oh, you guys are still behind the times. I'm just kidding.
I actually got mine today, really. Yeah. But anyway,
we have another caller.
You're right.
Go ahead.
They're profiling people, and because they're profiling people, they're able to do what they do. In our case, we got an unfortunate situation where we have, a certain part of the country saying, no, we can't have profiling. That's completely out of the question. And on the other hand, you have people that say, you know what, we don't want to have 9/11. And that's why you have body cavity searches, because we're trying to avoid profiling, for the sake of being, quote unquote, I don't know what even to call that. To me, it's total nonsense. I mean, when we came to the States, okay, we came to Seattle. That's where I live, in Seattle, Washington, in the area. Okay, here, basically, there was an FBI guy who came and talked to my dad about his involvement in shipbuilding in Russia. That's how knowledgeable some people are here about who was coming. And my dad had zero chances of getting to Boeing. In fact, a few years before we came here, Seattle was a closed city to Russians because, obviously they were afraid that there was going to be some spying going on. And legitimately so. And I never for a second had any problems with people checking me or doing anything else, even though they didn't. But I'm just saying if they did, if they, watched after us or whatever, I don't care, because they should be doing this, because Russians did do spying, and I'm sure they continue to do spying. And so it's one of these situations where if you don't protect yourself, that's how you end up with 9/11. Because there are people who want to hurt you, and that's what happens. So this is the deal with the airports. To me, we need to, either get away from this notion that we cannot profile, or we have to put up with, cavity searches. You don't have any other way to do it if you want to actually avoid, somebody blowing something up. So to me, it's a fairly simple deal.
Okay, but let me say this, and I got to bring this other caller. But
absolutely.
Whenever people bring in that argument that the profiling, it works in Israel, you have to remember, just like I said that Korea has better internet than the United States does, but it's a country of 48 million.
South Korea.
has North Korea, we have better internet than they do. I think like 4 people have it in North Korea, but but Israel is 7.5 million people, and it's almost like it's the population about of Virginia. It's tiny.
Right.
It's a tiny country that they're crammed in there, and they have different issues than we do. And the profiling thing does work, and they are surrounded by people. They're under constant threat. They if they lose one battle, their country's done, toast. So they can never lose a single battle because they'll be killed and overtaken or whatever. So I'm just saying it's logistically it's a lot easier to handle a few airports in a country of 7.5 million than the United States. Although they're obviously better at it because they don't have to get the white glove, turn around and grab your ankles every time you fly somewhere like we do in the United States. Okay, let me bring in.
Okay, it was good talking to you.
You too. You can hang on. I just got to bring in area code 845-298. How you doing?
Hey, Dan. It's prisoner Jean Valjean.
Oh, how you doing? Okay, you're...
Okay, how are you?
Good. You're prisoner Jean... Yeah, we were chatting today, and I think you were active in the document. So you... okay, tell me what... You're a naming issue guy, I assume, because your first name's Prisoner. Or you've somehow hacked the system to call us. Go ahead.
No, I'm a naming issue guy because they've terminated my primary account, and I've been speaking to you under Jean Valjean because they haven't found and nuked that one yet.
Okay, tell us your story real quick. We got to tie it up pretty soon, but you and Christina chat because I do remember. I'm sorry, I got Fridays are bad, every day's bad, but I got bombarded with so many different things today, and the document thing, like 20 people, was crazy. So I apologize, but now I remember. Go ahead and tell us what happened to you.
My story is like a whole bunch of other people. When I signed up for Plus, I signed up with the exact same name that I used on Facebook. I signed up with a name that I am used by hundreds of people who know me, by people who talk to me every day. I used, and since their policy required a first and last name, I added the first and last name that's on my driver's license as well. And about a week ago, they said, you're in violation of our names policy, without telling me exactly what I was in violation of. They shut me down, and since then I've been trying to negotiate with them for a common name that everyone knows me by that meets their policy.
And what response have you gotten from them?
When I get a response at all, and usually I get a response every 2 days or so, it boils down to, you're in violation of our names policy, please fix it.
So they don't.
Recently, they've said.
Is it like you have one of these robo-signers who used to work for the mortgage industry, the banks, and they just are like click, 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 click with form responses? Or do you think they're actually reading what you're saying and giving an intellectual response based on the content you sent them?
They are giving a pretty form response. I think the most ironic thing about the whole thing is that it's coming from an anonymous user. Google is not signing their name when they send it to us. But so that there's a bit of irony there. But when what we're seeing is basically something that it's not exactly a form letter, but pretty much what they're not answering our questions. They're probably too low level to answer our questions, to be perfectly honest. I think we all know that. And they're trying to do it as quickly as possible because, again, they don't have the resources to deal with tons of people who have these issues.
Yeah, that's a problem. What do you think, Christina?
It's hard for me because I really see both sides of the issue, and I think that Google is just mucking it up. I mean, they keep doing and saying things that make it harder to defend them. It's tough, They really hearing about people's experiences is hard for me because I don't have a reason right now to hide my name. I don't go by a pseudonym. It's really, I do my best to be empathetic, but it's really, I just don't have the experience. They're not handling it well. I don't know what the right solution is. I have said repeatedly I don't envy them their decision or their job with this, but they are, it seems like, alienating a lot of people, and those people are passionate about wanting to use the name that they want to use for a lot of good reasons. So the question ultimately, and I hate to say it because I want to think better of Google, but the issue is, are there enough people who are upset about this to make Google want to cater to them? And that's the question. That's the question that is it about money? Is it about PR? I don't know. I don't work for Google. I'm not in the department that makes this decision, but I can't imagine that it's a pretty sight going into those meetings right now because they've got to know that people are boycotting and going crazy over this.
By chance, did anybody suggest that they keep both? Let people put in the real names, but also have the other.
They do. There's a tag. Yes, there's
other name fields. So why is that not sufficient?
Because you have to display your real name too. The problem is that people are saying they want to go by pseudonyms to protect their real identities, and some people, are fine with both, and those people probably aren't too passionate about it either way.
How do they know? How do they know? How do they know if you are Mrs. Forrest, who's a legitimate person who wants to have a life beyond school, or if you're the guy who's the hairy-chested 50-year-old who's looking for 9-year-old girls?
Yeah.
How do they know?
When
they can't strap you to a polygraph.
Prisoner,
That's the problem. I could see their problem. They can't give everyone a polygraph test.
No,
and give the service away for free.
Why when Prisoner and I were having sort of some discourse over this issue in the last couple of days, it's been hard for me because and I can admit it, there's a little bit of bias. Like the name Prisoner to me does not evoke positive thing.
Right.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's hard for me to look at that and say, okay, well, I have no problem conversing with someone named Prisoner on a social network. And you know what? That's my bias. I don't know if that should be Google's bias, but there's
It's probably not.
something.
It's probably not helping him in his negotiations with Google. I'm just. I'm
No,
being,
it probably isn't. But
you're trying to make a
problem is,
point. You're pissed off, and you're trying to make a point. That right?
It's not so much that I'm pissed off, and it's not so much that I'm trying to make a point. It's more that I've got people who only know me as Prisoner. And if I
Right.
start posting under another name, they're not going to recognize me. And they're just going to start glossing over the things that I write. And it's not that I'm making any money from the things that I write. It's that these are people who are my friends,
Sure.
who have
Yeah,
been
no,
my
that makes
friends for
perfect sense.
20 years.
Well, but I think the other names issue, can you explain why that doesn't work for you? Because it will pull up.
Well, I guess
think
It won't. Well, here's the issue. It won't pull it up when you're just reading a post from me. If you're just going through your stream, reading through the stream, you won't see Prisoner. It will be in another field that only shows up when you click on the name. And in fact, when you hover over the name, then click on something else.
What about
I
if
think
you
what
put
they
it
need
in?
to do
What
is-
can you do it like?
What they should do is allow you to select which other name you want to use as display name. That's what they should do. Don't you think
Now,
that would work?
everyone tends to sort of hover around something like that. It should be something that's set on your circles. It should be something that's negotiated between you and the person reading it. Everyone's kind of in agreement in sort of this vague sort of way. Yeah, that would be nice if they do it. But they're not going to commit to features, and they've said they're not going to commit to features.
I think
releasing them.
The problem is you are, a gap guy. You're falling. You're in those cracks, and I think basically they're trying to just get basic stuff into the system, like the games, and deal with things that affect millions of users, and you're stuck in this situation. They're like, man, this is complicated. Let me deal with you later. I think that's probably the situation.
Here's the thing, and I can understand that from their point of view. Part of the problem, though, is for a lot of us who have looked at social networks, and I mean social networks going back 20 years. I don't just mean this new fad around on the web. When you look at how people interact with other people in the real world, on telephones, by mail, however you see people interacting with other people, they negotiate a name between themselves.
Sure.
And it's not, that's how we deal with other people. The fact that I call you Dan and not Mr. McDermott, and not Dan McDermott, and probably not Daniel, which is probably what's on your driver's license, means that we have established some kind of connection.
Yeah,
And
there's guys.
that's the
I mean, there was a guy. Yeah, every bar has. There was a guy when I knew him well for a year before I ever knew his real. He went by MacGyver because he looked just like the MacGyver guy from TV. I didn't know his real name was Dave for like 6 months or a year. And there's always a Rusty or a Shorty
Right,
or whatever.
Where
Yeah.
In any social environment, people come up with names for themselves, and that's how your circle works. And what word did I just use? I just used circle. That's what Google was looking at. They were trying to model the real world when they created circles, but they left out this crucial component of how people in the real world treat other people in their circles. Now, you can say, okay, they made the mistake, eventually they'll get to it. That's fine. And, I can understand that, okay, maybe they didn't really get any sociologists in to look at how people in the real world actually talk to each other.
Well, they have
But
a
you're saying
reputation.
don't suspend you in the meantime until you get to it. You're saying
That's kind of what I'm saying, yeah. I mean, I'm saying, at the very least, they can acknowledge the fact that, here's where they're going, that they want to really model how the real world works and not how they want to claim the real world works.
I don't know how I would deal with this if I was Sergey. I don't know. I mean, this is like. I know what Google's doing.
I don't
They're like,
either.
what a pain in the ass. You know what I mean? What do we do? And it's all these individual things.
Yeah, but you can. I think what he just said, I think makes perfect sense. Why not let you specify what name you want to use for every single circle? I mean, it should be. I mean, in your profile, let's say that they insist that that's the policy. Fine. In the main circle, the main profile, and then for the individual circles, and of course, when you drop somebody in a circle and you send them. They see that you added them to the circle, have the name that you indicated for that circle be the name that's given to the person. So
now, admittedly, there are a lot of details and there are a lot of problems involved with that. It's not as simple as, oh, we'll just do this. I don't think anyone's claiming that it is. I mean, and if changes, if changes like that were quick in coming, we'd have a lot more changes that we need in Plus right now. So we understand that it's going to take time. Well, you'd think that, but I can see there are a lot of cases where you go, well, how do you deal with that? And making sure you get the right thing. So I don't think it's as simple as even I just portrayed it. But I think it's what they're looking at. I think that's where they're going for. And I just wish in the meantime they wouldn't try to kick us out.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, you're absolutely right about that.
What their last statement on names essentially told us was, we don't want your kind here.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's pretty rough on us, because that means we're not because that means that we're not allowed to be part of the discussion about us being there or not.
But you're the reason for the discussion. I mean, to say that I can understand how you would react that way to their announcement. It was not a good announcement. But I don't think that it's entirely fair to say that they're saying we don't want your kind. They have at least acknowledged it's more complex than that. What I wanted to say earlier is that we need to keep in mind that Google has a long reputation of forgetting that people are people, and they get obsessed with numbers, they get obsessed with engineering, they get obsessed with technology and innovation, and they are going to screw stuff like this up. And I think what we may have to do is bridge the gap a little bit for Google and try to come up with an innovative solution, like letting things be, on a per circle basis. That's a great way of sort of circumventing the issue for everybody. Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But I think the mistake people are making, and it's why we say pitchforks and why we say, everybody's passionate. If you get caught up in emotion, Google may not understand you. If you get serious about coming up with an innovative way to do it, and you approach it, pretend you're a developer for a minute, Google may be able to accept some kind of compromise. But we can't just
Christina, hold on. Christina, they have a long history of this. I was promoting a video for something and buying ads, and I said, how come you're charging, it was a YouTube video, I said, how come you're charging me for 20,000 views, but YouTube says it has 5,000 views? And then they switched to now it's per view, not per click. And they have a long history of this. This is a problem with a lot of companies that are engineer culture. They don't have end users, and they need to have non-technical people who are working with the engineers. And when the non-technical, that's typically at a lot of companies, they call it a QC department, quality control. And that's where they get non-geeks, non-technical people, just end users, to sit there and use the program.
Well,
but ordinarily, quality control has access to communicate with the engineers. That's the point. And if he's getting form letters back,
that's what in theory they're saying the field trial is for. And at the same time, they're essentially saying they don't want some people in the field trial, and that's kind of rough. But Christina, one of the points you made, and I think you've got to remember also, Google does tend to end up being in an ivory tower sometimes. I mean, yesterday I was in a hangout with one of the Hangout engineers, and somebody asked for a feature, and he said, yeah, it's a pretty good idea. How would you see it working? And they were kind of talking about it, and at that point I jumped in and I said, what you're asking for is exactly the same as GoToMeeting, and GoToMeeting provides all of these things you want, plus it provides this and this and this and this, and you can watch in the Hangout the engineering guy was furiously scribbling down on his notepad. He had never heard of the product before. He had never heard of GoToMeeting. He had never, seriously.
It's now, you hear it on the radio all the time.
At one point I said something like. At one point I said I was making a comparison to something that Facebook Pages was going, and he had never heard of Facebook Pages.
Yeah, because those suck royally. Let's not get into that. No, I was going to say, one time I actually got invited here in Kirkland's Google office to do a focus, like a research like they do one-on-one. Microsoft does a lot of those, and Google does too. So you can't really say they don't do anything with regular people. I mean, I realize I'm not typical end user. I'm actually a computer guy too, but they didn't invite me to come in and look at this hypothetical deal and sign an NDA and all that. So they do talk to people. They don't just do it all within their little circle. I don't know how much they talk to people, but I know firsthand that Google does talk to people.
Let me go, Christina. Let's go over the random fun topics because we got to tie this up. Christina and I had a conversation that we thought the show was going too long, and we were gonna try to keep it real tight. And here we are, the longest yet. And these folks spent all this time, but you guys are great. Prisoner and the Russian guy. I'm sorry, I know you don't like that. I'm joking. I don't know. I can't pronounce your name. What is it?
Oleg. Remember
Oleg.
Cassini, the guy who used to do shoes? Remember? He was a famous shoe guy, Oleg Cassini. So it's same name, Oleg.
I got
Four-letter word. Come on.
Okay. I'm sure I'm not the only.
Four-letter words too.
All right. Oleg,
Yeah.
formerly of the Russia, or I guess formerly the Soviet Union, and now in the United States, exercising his well-earned First Amendment freedoms.
There you go.
And doing a great job. Okay. Like they say, there's no worse non-smoker than an ex-smoker. There's no bigger democracy advocate than someone who didn't have it growing up.
Absolutely.
Okay. Fun time wasters. I see some suggestions here at the top of the list there. Christina, what we got there?
The random topics that everybody sort of put in.
Yeah.
Well, is there any way that you can put this picture up of this iPhone 5?
I can't. It's copyrighted. We can refer them to the document, but it's a hysterical one. The first one there is talking about Hangouts. And then there's a great iPhone 5 picture, but I can't. YouTube, when they have a monetized thing, whatever they say, they freak out if you put anything. And this guy drew this picture. It's a obvious copyright violation.
It's in the document. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's great. So the Hangouts, I guess they're suggesting that there's some links here, right, for cooking lessons. That's a good idea.
Right. It looks like there are people were thinking of creative ways that they've seen people using Hangouts. And again, you should have a look at the document so that you can access this stuff. But it looks like people are doing cooking shows and cooking lessons. I did see somebody who was using Hangouts to monitor their baby in a crib, which was pretty cool. I don't remember who did that, and we don't have a link, but I'm pretty sure it could be Googled. And then there's the concerts, of course. There's Daria Musk, and I haven't heard of the other group that's mentioned here, Debs and Errol. I don't know, but I'm going to check that out after the show for sure. And then game shows, which I have actually been waiting to be brave enough to go into a hangout for a game show with John Herman. It looks super fun. It's really exciting. So I think that's some fun stuff that people can do other than waiting for their games tab to roll out for sure.
Wouldn't it be neat if you could watch a hangout even if they had reached the limit, that others could just observe? That's neat. Of course, we can record them. Or at least if you have I could record it here. I could run. I'm trying to get it to where I can run one live, but we're getting ready to move our studio 3 hours away, and I'll have different capabilities at the new place. One thing I noticed, I was just a random observation I jotted down while I was editing the Google Doc before it got totally taken away from me by 30 different people. But I typed something about Facebook, and it shows up as a misspelled word. But Google Plus with a plus sign or a PLUS doesn't show up misspelled. I thought that was funny. And then what's the mathematical thing?
Yeah, I saw a mention of it, and I didn't get a chance to read the article. But someone linked what they wrote was that Google bids mathematical in-jokes as figures in an auction for Nortel patents. And loses.
Oh yeah, that was the pi. They did multiplications of pi. I think they bid, I forget how much, but that's the famous auction that they were accused of trying to join Microsoft in, and then they slammed Microsoft after Microsoft and Apple for their war against Google, and with buying nonsensical or groundless patents. And then Microsoft came back and said, well, we were going to bid together, and you pulled out and thanked me before the auction. And then they went back and said, that's, it's not accurate, that I forget what their thing was. And then, of course, the whole notion of Apple and Microsoft and Google all getting together to jointly buy patents is ludicrous. Can you imagine what the feds would do? They'd freak out. But yeah, they did. They bid multiplications of pi. The bids were odd, like 2.875248 billion, and I think the last one was a billion times pi, right? 3.4. I don't remember all of it anymore. And then, of course, there's this wonderful, blatantly stolen, copyrighted image of the iPhone 5, which I recommend you check out in our Google Doc. The extensions for Google Plus, security and privacy issues. I'm going to wait until another show because we're tight on time, and that's not something we can quickly do over, and it certainly isn't a fun topic. And then there was a good some recommended reads. Just I saw a couple there, and I saw the NPR one. It's just really interesting observations there. NPR is pretty smart, and in their writing, they're usually pretty good. And then we got alternatives to Google Plus. I'm not sure. I guess they're in the document if you want to look at those. Certainly not probably the focus of our program, and not the subject.
But the Google Docs thing was pretty cool. I think we should do that next week as well. I think it's really neat to watch people. I mean, I was able to, on my lunch break at work, I was watching live while people were just editing and, sort of making little jokes and then deleting them, and it was really fun to participate. It was almost like I didn't even pay attention to my stream for a long time, which is
yeah. We didn't have any when the ground rules. You put those up there, and then
that helped. Yeah.
And it was neat. You should check it out. We'll again under the video description, we'll put the link, and at some point we're gonna lock it so it can't be hacked in the future, and we'll just lock it as is, and then we'll do another one next week, and we're learning as we go. Our doc editing is in closed beta. No, it's open beta, right? So we reserve the right to make any changes and revert back to previous versions. And anyone who's spent a long time editing the document, we're just going to revert it, and you're screwed. And there's no appeal process. And then we'll revise that in a week, right? But anyway, I want to thank Prisoner and Oleg. I'm trying to bring them back in. I think.
Do you hear
me? Yeah, guys, you were awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have any final Prisoner? Did you have any final observations? I don't see why you can't have your real name. Like if I was called like Red or something, I couldn't say Dan in quotes Red McDermott. I don't see why that wouldn't work.
Well, I don't either, but unfortunately, neither of us are making the decisions, and I have a funny feeling I'll be back next week to talk about it some more.
Perhaps with a third name, right?
Well,
hopefully not.
We'll see what my name is next week.
They can't, and as I said at the top of the show, this is an unofficial analysis of the week's news, and so they can't ban you from the program. So you'll definitely be able to vent here if they do nuke you.
I don't want to vent. I want to discuss. Venting doesn't do any good.
It depends. Oleg crossed the line into venting a bit, and he was very persuasive. Go ahead, Oleg.
I have final shameless little plug if you guys are interested.
Sure.
You know how Google doesn't currently have the search capability for posts, and people wrote that you can use a browser search engine to edit another search engine and use a certain keyword, and you're able to search for information in posts.
Yeah.
So I wrote a little modification of that to basically use a bookmarklet to make it easier to use. So you click on the bookmarklet, the little link on the browser pops up with the little box where you type in criteria and gives you the search. And also using a modification of that, you can also create saved searches, equivalent to saved searches on Twitter, where you just put in whatever you want them to be. You can drop them, open them all in different tabs, everything. Very, very simple to use. So if you have any interest in that, you can find it in my thread in there somewhere. And if anybody asks, I'll be happy to discuss with them how to do it. It's fairly simple to do. Just have a little JavaScript that I wrote that you can stick in there, and it works really well until they come out with the search for posts. This works pretty well.
What would be great, Oleg, is if you could add that to the document.
Absolutely.
And then look at either of our profiles, and it's there if you
I
haven't gotten
already
to it
added
yet.
myself. Yeah, if you look through your deal, you'll see that I added you, and I was already in Christina, so you guys have me in both.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
looking at Christina did a lockdown version just that we're looking at, but it was a copy about 2 hours ago. She moved a copy over that we worked with during the show, but I'm looking here. Yeah, I see some changes in
But-
that wonderful iPhone picture. All right, awesome. Prisoner, thank you so much for calling
Thank you.
in. And Oleg,
for
thank
having
you. And Oleg, now that I
My
know your
pleasure.
name, I won't call you Russian guy. But
Thank
I
you,
say
please
that with
don't.
affection.
I'm a proud American.
All
I'm a
right,
proud
God bless
American.
America,
Thanks for doing it.
and we're
Absolutely.
stronger. We're stronger with you as part of it. Okay, Christina,
very
that was awesome. What'd you think?
I thought it was great. I think we have been on the phone for an hour and a half, though. And
But listen, you guys can like use wireless phones and pee and whatever. I'm stuck here. Wired under bright lights. So don't you'll get no sympathy from me. The first place I'm
The
going to
only-
hit is the men's room. Go ahead.
The only other limitation is when you guys, Christina wrote for me to call in after I put in a couple of my comments, and you cannot. I was trying to call you from Gmail to just actually call directly from, as I was looking at the display, so I can call you from the computer watching the show and the same guy. It doesn't work like that. So when this thing is on, when your show is on, the only way you can do it is by calling on the phone. You cannot use Gmail calling. Their usual.
I actually used Gmail calling, but I also do you have a Google Voice account set up already?
I do.
Interesting.
Uh-huh.
I was able to the first
So
show. that
it
you
just
did.
basically kind of blooped a little bit, and then it wouldn't let me call. So I assumed that it's not going to work because you got the audio going from there.
Try it
would.
again.
On the other hand, it makes sense. Why would you be able to call and talk to somebody when there's this other thing blaring in your ear also? I mean, that kind of makes sense that you couldn't effectively do so. And if you shut down the volume, you're shutting down the volume on the whole thing because
Oh,
so
no.
it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it can be done. I'll send you a message.
Okay, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
it's
All right,
a
guys,
lot.
It was a pleasure
It's-
talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ola. It's worse here because I have to repeat certain things because I want you each to hear me once. I don't want you to hear me twice repeated, and I want you I want to send it to the callers, but not send the callers back. But I need to hear the caller. It's a lot of routing. It's tricky. So I see what you're saying.
Absolutely. But after living under dictatorships, you know exactly how you got a good life now, Dan. So all of this is nothing compared to what you went through.
Yes. But
Exactly.
we had like guards around us and stuff, so we were pretty safe.
Yeah.
But hey, Oleg, it was great.
Making sure. Take care.
Yeah, I
Take care, both
appreciate
of
it,
you guys.
Oleg.
Everybody, thank you.
It was great
Bye-bye.
talking with Oleg in prison. I really appreciate you calling. I guess I wish more people would call. It's open forum. So thanks, guys. And Christina, awesome. I think we definitely should do the Google Doc again. And we'll set some. If anyone wants to, right now there's 11 people in it, right? And there'll be more because, but if anyone now we need to edit. I guess we'll set up a new one for next week. We need some ground rules and some formatting. I don't want to be
We'll
like
brainstorm.
I don't want to be anal Wikipedia, but I think these guys did great. I think we need just simple read me first. Here's how to do it, and to really get to topics and links, not so much actual conversation and commentary on them. That's what the show's for. But more like bullets, that's that sort of thing. And if we can just work that out, we'd surrender to folks to improve upon that. And we appreciate all the help we can get.
Yep.
And we need a lot sometimes. Poor Christina's over in
We
Houston
sure
in her PJs. Probably got about margarita number 3 by now. She's probably beat whatever Zynga
Not yet. I'm trying to get
game.
there, Dan.
You're probably been playing games the whole time. No response, so guilty as charged. All right, hey Christina, thanks so much as always. You're awesome.
All right.
You're awesome. Thank you, folks. I appreciate you watching. We're on. I'm back Monday through Thursday with the McDermott Report, which airs at this time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, midnight GMT, and that's a news, politics, current issues show. We talk the way we do this, but we do it about news. This program is every Friday with Christina Trapolino. It may at some point change, but for now it's every Friday at 8 live. It's always on the YouTube channel. And always, both of our profiles will post information before the show, and after we'll post the links. One of us posts the link, and then the other one shares it. And then we're also usually it's on Huffington Post after too, but that takes a day or two. And the version of this, if you go to Blog Talk Radio, that link, that in just a couple minutes it's up there, but it takes about 5 or 6 hours to upload the video version. It'll take 6 hours at least this time, because it's close to a 3 gigabyte file. And so that takes a long time. But for those of you who stuck out with us, there's about 29 listening or watching on Justin Live video, and then I don't know how many are listening on Blog Talk Radio. But thank you all very much. We appreciate it. This is a great show, and really appreciate the chat room. And they're all it's a riot sometimes. It's really funny, and it's distracting, but in a good way. So Christina, awesome. I'll talk to you Friday. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific, midnight GMT. All right. Have a great week. Thanks so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.